When may an architect show bearings and distances for parcel boundaries on a site plan? Never. The answer is never. Well, it's almost never. So let me explain. Okay, so just so you understand what I'm talking about, you've got a site plan, it shows a parcel boundary, and then around the parcel boundary, right, you'll see the architect will sometimes go in and show bearings and distances. Sometimes they'll show a bearing to the nearest second and distances to what we call the nearest hundredth of a foot. Okay, so when should an architect do that on a site plan? Almost never. It's a bad idea. If you're an architect, don't do it. Okay, there's one situation in which I think it's okay for an architect to do that. Okay, and that is if there's been a recent survey and the land surveyor is going to sign and seal the site plan with the architect. So in that one circumstance, I think it's acceptable for an architect to do it. If there hasn't been a recent survey and the surveyor isn't willing to sign the site plan, then that kind of information should not be shown. Now, why not? Why shouldn't an architect do that? I know there's going to be people, they're going to watch this video, they're going to say, Landon, that's ridiculous. I've been an architect for 50 years. I've always showed that kind of information on a site plan. So it's not ridiculous. I'm going to tell you why it's not ridiculous. In fact, I'm going to give you 3 reasons why it's a really bad idea, if you're an architect, to show that kind of boundary information without a survey, without a recent survey. Okay, so here's number 1. It's misleading. At best, it's misleading. It gives everybody who sees that site plan the appearance of a survey where no survey was performed, right? So the plan checker at the county or the city and your client and the structural engineer, everybody that looks at that site plan is going to look at that site plan and think, oh, there must have been a survey because look at these accurate parcel boundary dimensions that are shown, right? So at best case scenario, you're being misleading, you're being sneaky. Okay, that's the first reason. Second reason is it's illegal in California. You're not allowed to do that in California if you're an architect. Architects are not licensed to survey boundaries. And I'm not picking on you, architects. I'm a land surveyor. I'm not licensed to design buildings, right? You're not licensed to survey boundaries. I'm not licensed to design buildings, right? You do your thing. I do my thing. That's how we stay out of trouble. So if you're an architect and you're showing that kind of accurate dimensions on a parcel boundary, without a surveyor involved in your site plan, you're breaking the law. And I turn architects into the licensing board for this, to my licensing board, and I have had people disciplined and fined for this. So it's not something that you want to do. My licensing board, the licensing board for professional land surveyors and civil engineers, will come after you if you are an architect and you are pretending that your site plan had a survey when it didn't. The third reason is it's harmful. This is the most important reason. It's harmful. You harm your client and you harm the public. You harm their neighbors, right? First of all, it hides the true cost of a project, right? If the client needs a survey and you pretend that they don't need a survey and you give them a site plan that they go and get approved, then what happens is they go to actually build the improvements and they find out that they got to pay for a $25,000 survey and they're ticked, right? So it's harmful. It hides the true cost of the project. The second is it causes permitting and construction delays. I can't tell you how many times, it's once a month I get a phone call from somebody that's trying to pour concrete on a construction project and they can't because a survey wasn't done. They've got an approved building permit or an approved site plan and they're trying to get a building permit and they're either in construction or ready to go to construction and somebody realizes there hasn't been a survey and the wheels come to a grind and halt. Okay, so that causes permitting and construction delays. Those delays can have real costs. And then the other thing is, if worst case scenario, it doesn't get caught, somebody relies on your site plan, they go out and they build the improvements, and then you've got improvements over the line. I just saw a video the other day on LinkedIn, somebody tearing down a brand new 2-story house with an excavator bucket because the house got built over the property line. I guarantee you there was a site plan for that project. So, and probably an architect was involved. So, don't show bearings and distances on your parcel boundary, on your site plan, if you don't have a recent survey. And if you're going to show that information to cover your rear end, architect, you should have the land surveyor sign and seal the site plan with you. Architects that show that information on a site plan without a survey are negligent and they're breaking the law, right? Now, you might wonder, if you're an architect or an architectural student, well, what do I do then? What do I do on my site plan? What are my options? What if the client doesn't want to pay for a survey? Okay, so I'm going to address some of that in a separate video, but don't do it. Just don't do it. And by the way, I'm an equal opportunity harasser. Civil engineers shouldn't do this either, right? So architects or civils, don't show parcel boundary dimensions to the nearest second and hundredth of a foot if you don't have a recent survey. Even if that information is in the deed, it's dangerous and you don't know what you're doing.